mentioned grassroots and reaching out and so on. You were brought up not necessarily well-to-do or comfortably off, and exposed to other people within that same bracket and so on. Where did this, and this probably came from your parents, but I'll let you say it. Where did this passion to help people or to reach out to grassroots people come from?
Well, you're quite right. It started with my parents. My father was a lion. So I grew up in that environment of service. I know I'm being encouraged to become a member of the Lions Club for the longest while, but I firmly believe that when one joins an organization, one must be able to commit 100%, and I don't think that I have the space to do that right now. I mean, I contribute in other ways. But so I grew up in an environment of service. My mother, as a social worker, continued her social work on a voluntary basis with many organizations. Growing up, we used to say to my mom, another meeting again, because she was in a number of organizations just helping people, volunteering. So you grew up in that environment, appreciating that not everyone has the blessings that you have, that one must cherish those blessings and share. Share what you have. It could be just your knowledge. You may not have anything much. You may not have a lot of money. Sharing doesn't have to do or only have to be with sharing money. It could be sharing your talent, sharing your knowledge, sharing a gift of a smile to someone. So, it's different ways of giving. And yes, I will thank my parents for that.
Almost mischievously, I must ask you this question. Did you see history repeat itself with your children asking you another meeting?
Not so much another meeting, but bringing work home and trying to manage them and their homework and doing my work at the same time.
How did you balance that?
You just have to have a very good split personality, positive split personality, I must say.
I never heard of it before. Positive split personality.
It's not easy, but one has to be, and it's something that women have to do all the time. I'm not saying men don't do it, but you just simply have to multitask. You just don't have a choice. You do not have a choice but to multitask. But I have had some complaints from my children, especially my second daughter, about mommy's always working. When she was smaller, not now. But she announced when I was working at Chambers of the DPP, she went and she said, my mother is always working. And then it struck me that, I really need to do something about it. Yeah.
I happen to know you since we were children and so on. And I know of your work, your commitments, and how very challenging they are. Yet you have this pleasant personality. You smile easily. How do you manage that? What is your secret?
I have not a clue what my secret is. I work with lists. I make a list for about everything. I have a list for travel. I have a list. And when I say a list, a detailed list, because I will forget my glasses at home if I don't write it down. I make every week, I say to the children, so what do we need? What do you need to get for next week? And so I have to plan ahead. It obviously doesn't always work out, but I have to plan ahead. I have been blessed with an extremely supportive husband, Garfield Wiltshire, national athlete and table tennis, squash player, sports administrator. As I've mentioned my parents, I should mention his parents. Colin and Sybil Wiltshire. Of course, his dad passed away the same year that my dad passed away. We both lost our fathers in 2009. But a very, very supportive environment. And that's extremely important to be able to juggle the kind of work commitments we both have and to try to inspire our children to participate in as many things as they can without us all going stir crazy.
One question and then I'll take a break. How do you see the condition of women in Guyana?
Oh, it's mixed. There's been movement in terms of women in governance. I've done a bit of work on that, not only in Guyana, but regionally in the Caribbean community region, along with Rose Benjamin too, and Anande Trotman, Joseph, who's now in Grenada. So we've made some movement in terms of getting women's participation in political movement. What we need to do is to have more sensitive women. They have to be more sensitive to women's rights issues. And that's a whole focus, not only for Guyana, but regionally. Mm-hmm. There's been movement on the economic front. More women are in business. We still don't have as many women in the higher echelons of the private sector as we would like. And that is something that internationally we're still working on. But where we are having a tremendous amount of challenges is in the area of violence against women and girls. Physical violence in particular, but as I mentioned earlier, there's psychological violence, there's economic violence, and sexual abuse of women and girls, children, I should say, generally. Those are our major areas of concern. So whilst we have made a tremendous amount of strides, and Guyana has a lot of very, very good legislation, we have to put more systems in place for better implementation. That we recognize. We know we have a people resources problem. We don't have a lot of persons with the skills that are necessary. And that's why our diaspora is so important. We really need to have more persons from the diaspora either returning home permanently or returning to give of their time and expertise in many of the myriad areas that we need to have addressed. The issue of trafficking in women and girls in particular, trafficking in persons generally, is now a new area of concern that we have to tackle and address. The interior communities have opened up with the gold rush and gold mining, and that has opened up new challenges that we on the coastland getting into the interior to address those challenges. Financial resources, human resources challenges. So whilst we have made tremendous strides, we do recognize that we have a lot more work to do.
Well, I would like you to think of this question during the break. What are your thoughts on gender equality in the judicial sphere in the Caribbean? We are back with Justice Roxane George. Roxane, the question before the break was, what are your thoughts on gender equality in the judicial sphere in the Caribbean? but more so judges?
Well, that's a question we get asked by United Nations every year when we do our reporting on the status of women. Um, on a serious note, we've managed to achieve larger numbers of women in the judiciary right through the Caribbean region. In Guyana, most of our magistrates are women, are female. At the High Court level, there are five of us. I hope I haven't made a mistake. Five of us who are judges. Um, at the Court of Appeal in Guyana, we only have one. There are only three judges up there, anyhow. At the CCJ level, the Caribbean Court of Justice level, Justice Bernard has just retired, and I gather there will be advertisements for judges. So we don't know if a woman judge or women judges will be appointed. I know in the OECS, that's the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the majority of their judges are women judges. There are quite a few Guyanese on the bench in the OECS. And we've made our mark throughout the region. So much so that in March of this year, the Caribbean Association of Women Judges was launched. Trinidad and Tobago took the lead, and the Trinidad and Tobago Women Judges Association was launched in October, November, I think, last year. I know it's 2013, latter part of 2013. And they really pioneered the effort to have a Caribbean Association. Justice Yonit Cummings Edwards, our Justice of Appeal, is on the executive of the association. I'm kind of like an associate, well, I shouldn't say associate member, but I can be co-opted to assist. So I'm like a Guyana representative. There's also the Caribbean Association of Judicial Officers, and I was on the first executive of that organization, or this organization, and I'm now the Guyana country rep on the executive. In terms of gender equality, we have had a greater push over the last 5 to 10 years, funded now by what is called UN Women. Mm-hmm. In the main, it was UNIFEM before. To sensitize and educate judges about gender equality. And I've benefited from gender equality training as a judicial officer. And fortunately for me, I'm also a facilitator. So I have gone to other countries in the region to facilitate training sessions with magistrates and judges, or combined magistrates and judges, or other what we call stakeholders, to use the current terminology, though that might have changed, to speak to stakeholders on the issue of gender equality. Because it is one thing to have the laws on the books. And as I said earlier, Guyana has a lot of very good legislation. And throughout the region, the Caribbean Community region, we have fairly good legislation from country to country. It varies, but it's fairly good. But the question is implementation. The question is attitude. Because when you come onto the bench, you come with your personality. You come with your background. You come with your values, good or bad. And so therefore, sometimes you do need to have a rejigging of what is going on upstairs in that brain of yours to make you understand and appreciate what is gender. There are many persons who mix up or don't appreciate the difference between gender and sex. Of course, sex is our natural physical manifestation of difference, but gender is how society sees us, expects us to act, or roles in society. And persons don't always understand that dynamic. So we have to do a lot of training. And the training has not only centered on gender equality, it also looks at the wider concepts of that are related to human rights issues. And so, but there's a great movement on that in the region. And the Caribbean Association of Judicial Officers, we had our third conference recently, has been pushing the human rights issue and has also been pushing gender equality issues.
Women have played a major role in the cultural, economic, and political movements in Guyana, do you believe they are adequately recognized and respected? And if not, what more can be done?
Oh, yes, they're adequately recognized and respected. I think I said earlier that we have had a number of women leaders, that the issues of on the question of governance is an area that I know that a lot of work has been done. The Organization of American States, OAS, many years ago had funded governance training in terms of encouraging more women to participate in political governance at the highest levels, that is at our parliaments, and not only in Guyana, it was a regional project. But work has to be done to have leaders, not just women, but leaders, men and women, appreciate gender issues, appreciate human rights issues, appreciate, in the context of Guyana, well, not in the context of Guyana, but worldwide, to lower the decibel level. When you consider it, the world is seeming to be at war with itself on a constant basis. And the question is, how do we inculcate in leaders an appreciation that they have to listen? They have to try their best to address concerns. We do have limited resources all over the world, but they have to try their best to address the concerns of persons, to appear not to appear, but to have integrity, to be honest, to not be grabbing, to appreciate that you may be put in a position of leadership, but that doesn't mean all is mine. So there's a lot of work we have to do on all fronts. And it's not only just at the national level. It's a question of leadership at the club level. Because there are governance issues. You know, when people speak about politics, we always think of the parliaments of the world in our various countries. It's not just the parliaments. It's not just the United Nations. It starts at the basic club level. When we have children who are members of a club, there has to be a leader.
Of course.
The leader may be an adult. A leader may be another child. So that when, for instance, at the primary school level, you have monitors, whether it's the hallway monitor, the class monitor, or prefect, it's leadership that is being taught. And it is how you lead. So it's not just an adult thing. It's something that has to be inculcated from the very young.
What do you think is needed to enhance or develop current and future leaders?
Well, just what I've been saying. I mean, I don't know. Do we need leadership school? I don't know that we can necessarily have leadership school, though. Of course, you know,
it's possible.
It's possible. Persons go to, but you see, the schools that you go to, the educational institutions, the environments that you're exposed to, you can absorb the qualities. One can absorb the qualities. One can understand and appreciate what it is to be a leader.
What role have women's movements played in advancing some of the women's issues you're familiar with?
A tremendous amount I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would not be sitting as a judge if it were not for the women's movement. You asked earlier about gender equality in judges in the region. The vast number of women in the judicial system, the administration of justice system throughout the region, would not have been possible without the women's movement. Starting from the suffragettes, I was, listening to all bit of the history of World War I and what the consequences were and so on, and how women got the vote after the war, and how women moved into the world of work because of the war. Mm-hmm. You had to look for other human resources and the opportunities that opened up to women. But women had to speak out, and they were speaking out for years, decades. I mean, when you read the history of the world, going way back. So that women have always come forward to have a voice. Whether they were allowed to do so in all spheres, we know it didn't always happen. But at the end of the day, a lot of groundwork was laid, a lot of the foundation was laid to allow women and girls to just be about anything you want to be now. Just about anything.
Talking about being a judge, how long have you been a judge?
This is my 10th year. At the end, thank you very much. I did it. It hasn't seemed like 10 years. It seemed like only yesterday I was sworn in. Yes, I was sworn in on the 31st of December, 2004. So officially, as of the 1st of January 2005, I was a judge.
Well, congrats. Is it a fair question to ask a sitting judge if they're having fun?
If they're having fun doing what? Judging?
Yes.
I wouldn't use the word fun, but it is gratifying. I have a deep sense of satisfaction with what I do. I would not change. I would not change the profession that I decided to, the course of study that I took. I wouldn't change. If I had to live my life all over again, I'd be quite happy to be a lawyer. Quite happy to be a lawyer. I've enjoyed my studies. I enjoyed my studies. And law is something like any other profession, but everybody says the lawyers read too much, and we read too much into everything. But it's taken a toll on my eyes, but I would do it all over again.
When did you first realize this is what you wanted to do? Do you remember the trigger?
No. As I said earlier, my father wanted me to get into science and number, and I said science is not for me. And since the word fail was not part of his vocabulary, I did the art subjects. I think it's after I left, or just at the end of sixth form. Yes. Okay. I didn't know before then. I say to people when they ask me, well, what do your children want to do? And I say, well, my girls don't know. And they say, but one is going to be in upper six, the other one's going into lower six. Hopefully, her exam results hopefully will be very good. And I said, but if they don't know, I have no problem with that because I didn't know either.
You were director of public prosecutions for a while. How would you say did that role prepare you for your role as a judge?
I don't know. Being DPP is a lonely job. You're the one. It's also a job in the front line. There's only one DPP. And everything that is passing in terms of crime, everybody wants the DPP to have a say about it. I enjoyed my 14 years as a public prosecutor. I think it prepared me, not just being DPP, but the entire journey through the chambers, starting as a state counsel in 1990 when I graduated from law school, from the Hewarding Law School. That period taught me independence. It taught me initiative. It grounded or concretized the legal principles that I had learned in law school. Because as with any other profession or any job, what you learn in university and what you actually do in practicality, sometimes are two totally different things. Of course, you're bringing that knowledge to bear on what you do. But as I always say to law students, when I used to teach at the university, I always used to say to the law students, right now you're advising John Doe and Jane Doe on a piece of paper. But when you leave law school, you're not dealing with John Doe and Jane Doe on a piece of paper. You are dealing with a live person. An emotional person, an angry person, happy person, sad person, a person who does not know anything about the law, others who will want to tell you what the law is, and you have to grapple with all of that and advise them accordingly. Take their case, prosecute, in my case, prosecute the matter as a prosecutor, defense counsel defending. So you bring all of that experience together. And I think that, and I think I can say I know, that those 14 years allowed me to absorb the law, to practice the law, and so that when I went onto the bench, I had a good foundation. I think I had a reasonably good foundation. The bench is totally different.
It is.
Totally different.
I am just curious, and it is because I am not in that realm at all practice. As a person, DPP, and then as a judge, did you find that there were aspects of your personality that you didn't realize you had, that the DPP position demanded?
No, I don't think there was any difference. At least not for me. Let me speak for myself. The DPP weighs the evidence or the evidence that is presented in terms of whatever the police or the law enforcement agency, because it doesn't have to be the police alone, would have investigated and they present. You, as DPP, and you, not only in Ghana, whoever's sitting in that position, we has to weigh that evidence. Because again, as I've told my students, and I've just said, you're dealing with a live person. If that person is charged, it could mean their life, their liberty is gone. Okay? As a judge, you're balancing and weighing what is happening in your court. And I remember a person saying to me, and one of my brother judges in particular, he said, when you sit on the bench, some of the others, not like if it's like you have a halo, but some or the other, you hear and see things that when you are on whichever side as a prosecutor or defense counsel, he was a prosecutor too, and he also had was in private practice, you're sticking to your side of the story. But as a judge, you have to keep those competing interests more or less balanced. So that's why you have the scales of justice. Okay, I'm not saying we get it right all the time. We are human beings. As one woman judge said at a conference, if you cut me, I will bleed. But at the end of the day, the prosecutor doesn't make a decision. In the sense that, okay, the prosecutor makes a decision to charge as DPP on the staff in the chambers. But when the matter comes to court, it is the judge who will decide, yes, this case is going to the jury or not. That's the criminal cases. In the civil cases where you have a plaintiff, you have a defendant, it is the judge who will decide who will get the house. And something as basic as that. So, when you decide who gets the house, somebody may have to move, or somebody would have to move. That's a life-changing issue. So that every step of the way as a judge, one has to listen to the evidence carefully, weigh the evidence as is presented. And many persons think that, well, I shouldn't say many persons, but I know persons think that, oh, well, the judge did this and the judge did that. It's always dependent, or should be dependent, on whatever evidence is presented before you. So if the lawyers make a mess of it, there's no help that the judge can give.
What does it feel like sitting in that courtroom, knowing that you have people's lives in your hands?
For me, it is very humbling. And I'm very conscious of that. I'm conscious, I said earlier that my father always said, think. And I always try to think before I speak and act. I can't tell you what my facial expressions are. I think sometimes they may be a bit expressive, but I try my best to think before I speak and act. And I no doubt my brother and sister judges do the same. Because what you say carries great weight. Not only at my level at the High Court, at the appellate level, I mean, I would make a decision. I would write my reasons for a decision. A person may appeal. That is their right. Appeal to the Court of Appeal, which until 7 years ago was our final Court of Appeal. Now we have the Caribbean Court of Justice. But whatever the judges decide, that's it. One has to abide. Otherwise, one would be found in contempt of court. And so, judges write lengthy decisions. Some of the decisions are short. It depends on the complexity of the matter. But we give our reasons for the decisions that we give. So it may appear sometimes as though we pull things out of the hat. But we know we have to follow legal precedent, legal principles. We have to listen to the arguments of counsel. Sometimes you wish the litigant had a better lawyer, but you are not to enter into the arena and to take a side and to help anybody. You may make a suggestion. Sometimes you say to the lawyer, is that all you really have to ask? They're supposed to take the hint and say, something is missing. If they're smart, they might ask for an adjournment and try to figure it out and come back. If not, they carry on bravely and rue the day. But, I mean, but it's an awesome and onerous job.
What does it feel like, or what does it feel like the first time you sentenced someone to death?
It was nerve-wracking. I got we have a particular wording, I can't remember it now, but we have a particular wording, phrase that we have to use, paragraph that we have to read out if the jury comes in with a guilty verdict for murder. Of course, we have other human rights issues that have now arisen in relation to death penalty. So, and our legislation has changed now in Guyana. So it's not mandatory death penalty anymore. But when I had to sentence the person to death, I read it out, and I quickly got off the bench and then realized I hadn't discharged the jury. I hadn't told them they had to come back. So, of course, I made an about turn and went back onto the bench. But I look back at it and say it was all nerves, you know. And people think, oh, you're rather blasé and the judge doesn't get nervous. As I said earlier, if you cut me, I'll bleed. So I look back and see it was a case of nerves. Because on the bench, I seemed very confident, but inside I was like, And because I came off the bench so quickly, I realized I forgot something. Didn't discharge the jury, didn't tell them when they had to come back. So I quickly made the about turn. And then there's a tradition which I didn't know of at the time, but apparently the pen that you write with, that you write the minute in your minute book about passing the death penalty, you're supposed to break the pen. I didn't. But as I said, we've changed our law in Guyana now, so it's not mandatory any longer.
What is most satisfying to you as a judge?
What is most satisfying to me? It might seem cliche, just trying to do justice as between the parties who come before me. As I said, a judge is not perfect. Decisions of a judge may be overturned. I've had some of my decisions overturned. I've had my decisions upheld. Sometimes your decisions are overturned, and years after, you're vindicated in the sense either that legislation is passed to accord with the decision that you gave that was overturned, or a new bench has a new thinking on the particular issue. But it is a very humbling experience for me. Maybe because my father was a judge, I subconsciously appreciate some of the nuances of the job. I don't know. I'm just guessing on that. But I do know from from having lived in the home with him and my own experience now that it is a lonely job. You can consult with your colleagues. You can seek, sources of information from senior lawyers in particular, and you have to do a lot of reading. If you're fortunate, we aren't so fortunate in Guyana right now, but if you're fortunate, you may have research assistants to help you. But at the end of the day, that decision carries that judge's signature. if it's a bench of an appellate bench with more judges, it's a collective decision of those 3 or 4 judges, 5 judges. Sometimes you have a bank of 7. You may have a dissenting judgment, a lone voice in the wilderness. You may have more than one dissenting judgment, but at the end of the day, it is your work, your decision.
Let's take a quick break, but I want to ask you this question before the break. As a woman and mother, how do you maintain your composure when dealing with severe domestic violence against women and children?